and thank you guys so much for joining us today. We are really excited to talk about why school food matters. Let me start with the housekeeping. We are very, very excited to have David Ramos with us. David, do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining.
So David is our moderator for today. He is going to help us stay on time and make sure all of our questions get answered. So if you do have a question today, type it into the chat and David will make sure that either we get it answered in our 50-ish minutes that we're going to spend together, or that we follow up with you if for some reason we run out of time. David, thank you for doing the heavy lifting of moderating this group. I'm going to introduce our guests as we bring them on, but we're very excited to have other members of our Whole Foods Market and Whole Kids team with us today. So we're going to dive in. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Nona Evans. I'm the Executive Director for Whole Kids and Whole Cities Foundation. And we are here today because over the course of our 12 years in this work, we talk a lot about school food, but very rarely do we pause and show you what we want the very best school food to look like. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about why nutritious, delicious school lunches are so important and why they're so hard to achieve. And you guys have the best of the best to talk to you about that work today. I do want to just put a little asterisk on our dialogue today. We're going to be talking about school lunch in the United States. Whole Kids also works and influences school lunch in Canada and the UK, but the systems and the support federally for those countries is different. So when you hear us talking about school lunch today, we're talking specifically about the US. If you're in the UK or in Canada, we're happy to answer those questions, and maybe we'll do a second session for our international school lunch work. So I am beyond excited to have three incredible leaders with us today who are truly transforming what our kids eat at school. But first, I get to introduce Vanessa Cruz, who recently joined Whole Kids Foundation. She has her master's in public health and is so incredibly passionate about school food. You're gonna just see and feel that. I don't have to tell you. We're so lucky to have Vanessa as a Whole Kids intern way back in the day when she was an undergrad. We knew she was special back then, and we're sort of acting a little bit like a professional sports team now, signing people before they graduate. So Kim gets the credit for stalking Vanessa through her studies and convincing her that Whole Kids was the place that she wanted to be. She is a registered dietitian, and she's going to give us a short primer on school food and set the stage for our discussion. So Vanessa, it's all yours.
Thank you, Nona, for that great introduction. I'm very happy to be here, and hopefully you guys learned something from this little presentation today. I'm really here to just give you a little bit of background about school food. So this is Whole Kids and our work in school food. So first, I'm going to talk about some historical context, and then I'm going to go into what school food looks like today, and then our actual work in school food. So for some historical background, before 1946, there was no national program for school food, and how kids were fed in school were primarily concerned moms and women in the community that came together and really decided to go into schools and cook for each other. And so it was really a female-led movement. Then after World War II, the #1 reason why men couldn't enlist into the army was because of malnutrition. So then nutrition and health became to the forefront of the national conversation. And this led to the National School Lunch Program being enacted. And so the language of the actual legislation really shows the focus of their goals. It was as a measure of national security to safeguard the health and the well-being of the nation's children and to encourage the domestic consumption of nutritious agricultural commodities. So I really want to emphasize that it was about the children's health and nutrition, but also to support our agricultural industry, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Then this program was very successful. So in the 60s, we saw growth in to include the school breakfast program, the special milk program, and the summer food service program. Then in the 80s, when Reagan came into office, there was a push to spend less money in the federal government. So this looked like reducing the spending in federal programs like the National School Lunch Program. So Reagan slashed about 1.5 billion off of the budget. So this led to lowered nutritional quality, increased privatization, and decentralized updating equipment. Then the next major legislation that impacted school food was the 2010 Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act under Obama. So this was the first major legislation that really set nutrition standards in school food. So prior to this, there was very little oversight about the nutrition quality of school food. So this was the first time that the US really prioritized this standard as a result of the rise of obesity rates in children. So what dictates what our kids actually eat today? So like I said, the Healthy Free Kids Act set nutrition standards, and those standards are set by the USDA dietary guidelines, which are revised every 5 years. So as those change, so do the nutrition standards in our school food. Then the reimbursement rates are also another very important component. So the current reimbursement rate for a free meal is $4.33, and for a reduced meal is $3.93. And this may seem like a sufficient amount of money to purchase food to create a school meal, but what a lot of people don't realize is that school food works as an independent industry than like the actual school district. So the school district doesn't actually fund the school food program. It works independently and is expected to run at cost or even at a profit. So when you break down those actual costs, it looks like about 45% is used for food, and the rest of it actually goes into other costs of running essentially another business. And so they have about $1.95 at most to spend on actual food. So this leads me into commodities. So like earlier I said, commodities come from our farmers in the US. The USDA will buy up those commodities and then resell it to schools at a much lower cost. So the USDA has a lot of buying power compared to small individual schools. So when they buy up these commodities and sell it at a lower cost, this is an opportunity for schools to work with their tight budget. And so this can look like sometimes there's a surplus of, say, like chicken in the US. And so schools will get chicken at a very low cost. And so typically we can see that schools will take that and maybe turn it into, let's say, like chicken nuggets. But here in our work, we definitely encourage that to be changed into something more like diced chicken that they can serve at their salad bars. But this essentially is what dictates what our kids eat today. So this is just a fun little question. So like I said, the National School Lunch Program has nutrition standards. So I'm just wondering how much knowledge is in the room. And I know we have definitely some school food experts, so I'm sure they'll get this, but please select all that is regulated in the National School Lunch Program. How many times a certain color vegetable needs to be served a week, salt, sugar, and calories. I don't know if David wants to check the chat, see if people are answering. If not, I'll just show you guys the answer.
No answers yet.
Okay, I get it, guys.
Only thing not is sugar.
Ooh, we have an expert on our hands in that chat. So whoever said everything but sugar is correct. And this tends to surprise a lot of people because we hear all the time about how much sugar our kids are eating. And although the National School Lunch Program doesn't regulate sugar, here at Whole Kids and definitely our partners at Chef Ann, when they go into schools, they definitely encourage schools to set their own limits on sugar. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the current trends in school food. So during COVID, all schools got free meals, but that's expired. And so now schools are in a really hard transition of how to manage all the participation they received during COVID and now into a time where participation is down. A lot of people realize that it worked so much more in the favor of kids to have free meals for everyone, that when everyone was offered a free meal, everyone was benefiting. And so now other states are taking it into their own hands and passing legislation to have universal free school meals, like California and Maine. And then Minnesota, New York, Vermont, and Colorado are currently working on it. And then recently, about 2 weeks ago, the White House held a conference on hunger, nutrition, and health. And after this conference, they came out with a national strategy. And within that strategy, they made it a priority or a promise to expand access to healthy free school meals for 9 million children by 2032. And they specifically talk about adding scratch cooking or prioritizing scratch cooking. So I'm really excited that this is definitely the national conversation and where we're moving in school food. So I'm just so happy to be here to be a part of it. So now I get to talk about all the work we do in school food. And I think it surprises people by how much programs we have and like where we came from. So before Whole Kids was even founded in 2009, Whole Foods took it upon themselves to partner with Chef Ann and other groups to start the Lunchbox, which is a free online resource to help schools improve school lunch. And so the reaction from team members was that they were really excited. They loved to see Whole Foods moving in this direction and supporting their schools. So from that excitement, they realized there's an opportunity here to really move into that space and create Whole Kids Foundation. So in 2011, Whole Kids was actually founded, and that came off of Let's Move Salad Bars to Schools, where they pledged $1 million to give schools salad bars. Then came the Healthy Teacher Staff Program, which is kind of an offshoot of the Healthy Eating Specialist Program that was actually in stores. Then came Get Schools Cooking, which we also partner with Chef Ann and continues to be a program here today. And they just finished their application process for the 5th cohort. We have Canadian Farm to School Grants, the CIA Healthy Kids Collaborative, which is a focus to create and develop plant-forward recipes for schools. Then we have the Parent Advocacy Toolkit, which came out of a need to really encourage community members outside of schools to advocate for what they want to see in school, what they want their kids to be eating in school. Then we have Scratchworks, which will have its first annual gathering in April and was really spearheaded by Kim on our team, who you'll hear from in a little bit. And finally, our Healthy Pathway Fellowship Program, which we're also partnering with Chef Ann. This came out of a need to really create a diverse workforce that was excited to work in the school food space and have a pipeline of culinary professionals who could create good food in schools. So all of our work is really to encourage schools to move across this continuum from less scratch cooking to more scratch cooking. And so all of our work meets schools where they're at, and we encourage them to move along this process. And we know that nutrition standards are better when you're scratch cooking, and also your impact on your local environment is better when you're scratch cooking. So I just want to say thank you for listening to my little spiel today. And I'm so excited for you guys to hear from the rest of the team today. They're all incredible people, very knowledgeable.
Vanessa, you don't get off the hook quite that quickly. We're going to open it up for questions. So I can only imagine that for our guests who have not delved deep into school food up until this point, your head might be spinning. You might feel a little bit like you just got the fire hose. And that's okay. What we want to do is show you how complex school lunch is. And I think you probably just got that sense. So just to put it in context, 31 million students every single day eat school lunch. Many of those also eat breakfast, snack, and dinner. And when you combine all of the school cafeterias across our nation, it's actually the largest restaurant chain in the country. So if you just stop and think about the magnitude of those meals being served to our next generation of team members, customers, and leaders, that's why we're so deep into this conversation. So if you have questions, drop them into the chat. That list of programs probably left you a little bit reeling. There's more detail on all of them on our website. We're not going to talk about all of them today. But Vanessa, I really wanted you to share, sort of a little bit about your personal experience of all the things you could have chosen to do with your career. Why school food?
Thanks, Donna, for bringing me back into the conversation. And so when I was completing my requirements to become a registered dietitian, I had the great opportunity to spend 9 weeks at a local school district. It was a really small school district, about 1,200 students total, and 4 schools. And working with them, I realized this narrative that the nation had created, that lunch ladies are mean and don't care what our kids eat, was completely wrong. I was so humbled to be there and realize that the people working in school food love the children and are deeply passionate about what they're feeding them. They just don't have the resources or sometimes the knowledge to get to where they want to be going. And so when Kim offered me the opportunity to come back and be part of the access to knowledge and support, I was really excited to come back. But that's what really led me there. And I definitely came into it from the perspective of wanting to improve nutrition in children's lives, but stayed because of the passion and what I saw in the industry.
Thank you for sharing. David, are there questions that we need to tackle, or should we keep going?
We can keep going.
Awesome. Well, it is my greatest honor and pleasure now to introduce you to 3 people who are not only literally changing the way we feed our kids in this nation, but who are just amazing friends as well. Kim Harrington has led Whole Kids Foundation school programs for over 10 years now. She is the strategic mind behind how we are addressing children's nutrition at every life stage, and is driving the systems change that Whole Kids is part of, certainly in the US, but in all of the countries where we work. Mara Fleischman and Annalisa are moms. They are passionate advocates for nutritious school food, and they both work for Chef Ann Foundation. So I want to pause just in case we have guests who aren't familiar with the Chef Ann Foundation. It is a nonprofit organization that is one of Whole Kids' longest running partners in this work. Chef Ann is a human. I'm going to let Mara tell you who she is a little bit later, but just in case you hear us talking about Chef Ann, it is both a person, but often we're referring to the organization. And sometimes we say CAF. So CAF, the Chef Ann Foundation. So just in case you hear that, we sometimes slip into our shortcuts. So I'm excited to have both Mara and Annalisa here to represent both their personal passions and the work that they do. Mara is the CEO at CAF, just to keep you on your toes, and Annalisa leads much work, but specifically our Get Schools Cooking program, and she'll share a little bit about that with you as we chat. I also like to call her out because prior to this role, Annalisa was the school food service director in Austin ISD. So she gets our Hero Award for transforming our school district from processed food to scratch cooking. So I see we have some folks here in Austin. If your kids are able to eat school lunch, they're getting one of the most nutritious meals they can possibly get. So we're very fortunate to have a long history with Annalisa. So you guys have probably heard that Whole Kids funds salad bar equipment and training for schools. We do that in partnership with Chef Ann Foundation. They've even developed an online school food institute. And now when a school district gets one of our salad bar awards, they complete training online before we ship their salad bar out. So we're constantly looking for improvements in the work that we're doing. But salad bars are just one tiny piece of making sure that those 31 million students who eat food at school every day get the most nutritious meals possible. So we want school breakfast, lunch, snack, and supper to all be the most delicious and nutritious meals that a child has every day. So I think we should just dive right in. Annalisa, could you show us what our ideal school lunch looks like and talk about how it differs from one that is mostly processed food?
Sure. I think an ideal school lunch is hopefully scratch made and has fresh fruits and vegetables in it, vegetables incorporated into the entree. And so this is an example of our beef with broccoli and whole grain rice. Hopefully the whole grains or the grain that's offered is a whole grain and not a refined grain as well. And as often as possible, an intact grain like a rice or quinoa or barley. And then I think we have a vegetarian meal to show as well. So plant forward meals are another ideal way to build healthy habits with our students. Again, you can see a focus on vegetables in the entree, those fresh sides as opposed to frozen or canned. And you can see also here we have the milk in a cup rather than in a carton, so that students can choose the amount of milk that they're taking and have the choice between milk and water. But again, I think it's a big focus on the fresh vegetables and vegetables in the center of the plate as well, with the whole grains and the protein.
Oh, Lisa, thank you so much. So I just want to let it sink in that is what school lunch can and should look like. It's what our lunches can and should look like. Mine don't look that good many days. But then I also just want to remind you that our school food professionals and teams can put food like that on a plate for roughly, $1.50 or $1.95 in food cost. That's the challenge. We used to do these events where we would challenge people to create a school lunch with that budget, and it was so interesting. So, I want to invite our audience to think about what school lunch looked like for you. I'm probably much older than everybody here, but I remember the square pizza and the napkin dispenser at the end of the lunch line. And you had to take the whole pile of napkins to soak the grease off the top of the pizza before it was even close to edible. And then it was questionable. I'll also never forget back in the late 80s, I walked into Austin High School, where my son later went. And I was working on the culinary program. So even back then, our school district was teaching kids how to cook as part of their instruction, but in the cafeteria was literally a Jack-in-the-Box. So that's why Whole Foods got into this work, because we know that in order to learn, kids have to have the right nutrition. They have to be well fed. So just hold those photos that Annalisa shared with you in your mind as what we want for our kids. So Kim, you guys make it sound so simple to serve our students these kinds of meals. Can you tell our guests today about the Get Schools Cooking grant program and how it works and some of the successes that you've seen?
Absolutely. And I just first want to say I am so honored that our dear partners and friends from the Chef Ann Foundation have joined us today, because I think the work that they have been focused on and are able to do as a result of our partnership is truly changing our children's nutrition. So you guys know that we do a lot of work in getting children excited about eating healthier. But that's only half the equation. The other half is making sure that they have access to healthy, delicious, scratch cooked meals. And so we wanted to support districts that wanted to make those changes. And we started off many, many years ago in providing equipment grants. But we quickly learned that districts all start at different places, and each one needs very customized, specific support. And so through a couple of iterations, the Get Schools Cooking program became reality in 2016. And what's different about this program is it doesn't just provide a combi oven for a district, but instead provides a deep assessment, a set of strategic recommendations, technical assistance, and a set of relationships with other school food professionals in order to make these transitions. And I'll say one of our earliest cohorts was back in 2015, 2016, and it was with Bellingham, Washington. And because of the incredible work that went into the program and with the district support, there was able to be leadership changes, a commitment and coming to fruition a central kitchen so that children had access to these scratch cooked, healthy, nutritious meals. I will also say Chef Ann Foundation is an innovator. And one of the things, we could only do maybe 3 or 4 districts per cohort. And this cohort is a multi-year program. Because of the innovation and the commitment to excellence, and with the scale assessment tool, we are now able to support more districts per cohort and also deal with larger districts, which has always been one of our barriers. So I just want to really highlight these changes. This is going to that systemic change that we really want to help support.
So Kim, Get Schools Cooking moves a district from processed food to scratch cooking in about 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in the time we've been doing this, I haven't counted lately, but I think it's way more than 24 school districts that we have in the process.
Yep, absolutely.
And these commitments are on average about $200,000 per district. So that can just give you a sense of the kind of lasting change that is possible with the type of partnership we have. It's just humbling. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Kim. You know, Annalisa, what is it like when you visit one of these districts? I know you and Vanessa were just in Wisconsin Rapids, and that you've been to some corners of this nation that you might not have otherwise visited. What is that like? Are people happy to see you? Are they intimidated? What does it feel like?
People are overall excited, and there's always 1 or 2 who are skeptical about what the process means, and are ripe for education about how we're there to support their goals. But overall, the directors are excited, the central staff is excited. They have put in a lot of effort before we even get there, by applying for the grant, going to the workshop, providing data, doing interviews, going through a scale assessment. And the kitchen staff have been really excited too. The last few assessments we've done have been in the Midwest, and so they're overly friendly as well. We start off with a kickoff meeting with the central team and see if they have a central kitchen and a central warehouse. We visit those and set goals for the visit. And then we go out to every single school to see production, which is the food being made, to see service, when the kids are eating, what happens at the end of service, how the kitchens are cleaned, and do a thorough inventory of the equipment that's there. We usually go out on our own without the food service leadership so that the teams feel a little bit more comfortable. And then we do a visit with some of the food service leadership. So we're doing capacity building and sharing what we see when we go out, because we all know that an outside set of eyes sees something different than what you see in your own work every day. And then we are doing analysis, putting together some initial recommendations, and end the visit with a meeting with the food service team and their administration, the superintendent, the CBO, the CFO, the director of HR, director of finance, and start to go through the recommendations and what the next steps are for the program. And we just got back from Wisconsin Rapids, and it was so exciting there. The superintendent had his laptop out and was taking notes and asking the food service director about action items and what he was hoping to see. And the business officer was also taking notes and thinking about how they might change the direction of some decisions to align with the recommendations. And so I think we start out with excitement of the food service team. And as we're there and people begin to be able to visualize what these changes are and hear from experts and people who have done the same work, they all get really excited, so that like work starts to begin even after we go back and we are writing our report. Before they even get the report, they have an idea of what's coming and can get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'll just underscore the, like at Whole Foods, we get so much further when we have leadership support. And this program is like if, we sat down with Jason, our new CEO, and made sure he had buy-in to whatever it is we wanted to do. That's what this team does with the leadership at a school district. So before a school district is ever welcomed into the program, there's an interview that includes the superintendent, and boy, can those be revealing. So I just want to applaud all the effort that goes into knowing when a district is ready and committed. Speaking of that, Mara, you've had a little bit of personal experience transforming school food. Mara moved to Boulder and was integral to the School Food Project, which is what Boulder Valley ISD calls the work they've done on school food. And it's been going for more than 10 years now. So from being a parent on the front lines of school food to now leading Chef Ann Foundation, can you share a little bit about who Chef Ann is and what it's like to be a parent advocate for that change?
Yeah, so great to be here. Thanks for having me. So Chef Ann, as Nona said, is a real person. And she was a kind of white tablecloth chef who was recruited to come and build out a food program at one of the most exclusive private schools in Long Island called the Ross School. When she got there and did that, she started investigating kind of school food in general. So, private schools don't necessarily operate under the National School Lunch Program that Vanessa was talking to us about. And she started researching it. She saw how little money school food, actual public school food programs had, and the kind of food that they were serving. And so then she was talking within her communities about it. And Alice Waters, who's a big chef in San Francisco, convinced her and recruited her to come be the food services director at Berkeley Unified School District in California. And it's there where she got the nickname, the Renegade Lunch Lady. So if you ever hear that nickname, that's Chef Ann. And she was named the Renegade Lunch Lady in a New York Times article because she was trying to move the program to scratch cook and serve fresh food. And if Ann was here, she would say, "Can you believe they wanted to call me a renegade for serving fresh food?" And so once she started making that change in Berkeley and was getting a lot of awareness about it, districts were reaching out to her all across the country to try and create this change. And she said, I can't put myself in every district. There needs to be an organization, a foundation to support these districts. And in 2009, that's when she created the Chef Ann Foundation to utilize those resources. And it was kind of this collision of sorts, right? So I worked actually at Whole Foods Market for 13 years. And some of my proudest moments, Nona and I started together in 2001, I believe. I have 3 children. And when I moved from Boston to Boulder and went to school lunch with my child, they were serving the worst food I could imagine. They were serving processed French toast sticks with a packet of maple syrup that had actually no syrup in it, and a side of pears and a sugary sauce. And this was prior to the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. So there was virtually very few guidelines. And I started thinking about how much sugar was in that meal and how kids were going to be able to learn. And working at Whole Foods Market at that time and being so proud of all the work we were doing around, sustainable seafood and animal welfare and, organic produce. I mean, I was there when the organic regular certification came about. I started thinking about, well, what is going on in school food? What, this is amazing, all the work we're doing, but like, what are we serving our kids? And that's when I started to get involved as a parent while still working at Whole Foods in the with the Boulder Valley School District, kind of showing up with a parent group, unexpected and expected, very frequently to the administration office to voice concerns. And it was from there that we were able to truly convince the administration that there was another way.
And Mara, as a parent, where did you start? If we have anybody who's thinking they might want to be an agitator for change, where did they start, and what resources do we have to help them today?
A great question. Well, that whole experience for me really ignited the lack of resources that there are for parents and the desire that there is for parents to change school food. So luckily, I have these great partners called Whole Kids Foundation, and they also saw the need for that. So together we created this parent advocacy toolkit. And it's really a reflection, not just on my experience, but the experience of parents across parent groups across the country that have connected with all of us about the need to change school food. So frankly, it is usually a parent group that that raises the concern in a district about the school food. And this is great. And there are also some complications with it. There are, as you guys heard from Vanessa, the National School Lunch Program has a lot of regulations to it. There are a lot of specificities around the reimbursement rate, around the nutrient guidelines, and parents usually go to a district office full of steam and ready to tackle everything without the knowledge that they need to have the right conversation. So that was the basis around this parent advocacy toolkit. It really created 3 separate sections or 3 separate steps for parents to go through. And the first one is about getting educated. So when a parent goes to a district administrative office to talk to a food service director, it is really important that they understand the parameters in which they're working in, so that, you know, and it's funny, I harken back to my Whole Foods days when we used to deal with customers who would come to us about, you know, different issues that they just didn't understand the bigger picture. And that's kind of the thing with school food. So there's a get educated, a get organized, and a take action component to that. And I think it really lays things out.
Awesome. And if you're watching the chat, I know David just dropped the link to the parent advocacy toolkit into the chat. And Melissa, I'm sorry you had the square pizza experience. I hope that is gone for good, but probably not. So I don't know, I haven't seen any questions, but if you guys do have questions, or if you want us to dive deeper into any specific area, please don't hesitate to ask. This is your time. We want to be sure we inspire and educate you. So while you're thinking up your questions, I want to talk a little bit about school food today. Annalisa, can you tell us just a little bit about the challenges that you faced as a school food director with staffing and supply chain over the course of the past few years?
I think that the challenges that directors have now with staffing and supply chain are even more pronounced. There's a lack of skilled workers who are interested in school food, which is one reason that we have started the Healthy School Food Pathways program. And the school food departments are competing with fast food chains and other big box places that are able to pay $22 an hour. So there's real competition for getting the staff in, and they really need skilled staff. With the food shortages, when we've spoken with some directors recently, you know, they're still not maybe getting the cases of fruit that they ordered, and they have to have a backup plan. And so they have the menu that they've executed, and then a menu that they've planned for when they don't get the food that comes in. And so the amount of effort and energy that it's taking to get the food on the plate and food on the plate, not just what was planned, I think is amplified. And so then, you know, making a change has a bigger ripple effect, and they have to have a backup plan for what happens with that change. We've been helping and supporting directors look for local, to do more local procurement so that they have the relationships with vendors and they're not a number, and then they can do things like diversify the offerings that they have through their menu cycles. There's lots of, I think, like in the weeds things that we're working with directors on for addressing the food shortages and even the staffing shortages, to think about kitchen efficiency to get good food on the plates. But I think it wasn't easy before, and it's not easy now.
You know, thank you so much for sharing that. One of the reasons I wanted to delve a little bit in that direction is, you know, for some of our guests today, they work in our Whole Foods Market stores and they're facing those very same challenges. So I wanted to call that out and say, you know, this business climate, this food climate is something that we understand in multiple ways. And in some way, I believe it's why Whole Kids Foundation and Chef Ann Foundation have been able to have such profound success, is we actually understand the challenge of dealing in food. It's perishable and it requires a lot of labor. So, you know, this isn't a celebrity organization going to a school district saying, you're not doing a very good job. It's a set of partners who have been there, done that, and really, as Kim said, start where a school district is with their goals and help them make changes. And sometimes that's just a salad bar, but there's no such thing as just a salad bar. The salad bar is probably one of the most important changes that a school district can make. And if you do that, you change fresh food access overnight. But it's also an entry point for the kinds of conversations we like to have. Mari, you know, I still get some questions from the old days, and you still see a social media post here or there of, you know, kids dumping their entire school lunch into the garbage can. Sometimes it's warranted when they're really terrible, but I think, you know, some of Michelle Obama's efforts got a bad rap as she worked to make meals more nutritious. What are the students saying about school lunch in our partner districts?
Yeah, so much like any systems change, there is an approach that, you know, has to be taken. When we work with districts to move them to scratch cooking, and one of the reasons why we need buy-off from the administration is because there is a process to change. And, you know, there is a moment when, if you're really in a processed heat and serve district and you move to scratch cooking, you have to do it slowly. There could be a moment where you see a dip in average daily participation, but then we always see it climb back up. And I think that, you know, I mean, I saw it in my own children. My daughter, Lucy, said, "Mom, remember those French toast sticks? Where did they go? I loved them." You know, and I tell her, "Well, what about the French toast casserole that's now cooked from scratch?" You know, and she would say, "But Mom, there's this little piece to it that I like, this or that." But soon enough, their palates become more accustomed to it. And, you know, a lot of the kind of, I guess, mistakes that we see made out there sometimes is that people will look at bringing on some scratch cook meals, but then menu them against some highly processed food. And what I tell people a lot is, if you offer a child a piece of broccoli or a Dorito, a lot of times they're going to choose that Dorito. And it's, you know, you really kind of have to think about what we're offering them. I mean, kids right now, by studies, are, you know, eating 3 to 5 meals a week of ultra processed food on a regular basis. And I think we have to really think about how we're going to change that. So there are a number of things you can do to reduce this waste, but I think the waste part of it was blown up a little bit because of the way it was being executed. But salad bars are a great example, Mona. So, you know, when you give a child, let's say, a pre-packed salad to meet the regulations that Vanessa was talking about, you know, you're making that choice for them. You're packing it up with a certain kind of lettuce, a carrot, a tomato, a cucumber, or whatever, and you're giving them the whole thing. And a lot of times they'll look at that and say, I don't think so. Whereas if they can go down the salad bar and choose what they want, you're seeing far less waste. So there's little pieces like that that you can implement.
You know, that is one of my favorite things to talk about is, first of all, the power of giving kids choice. It really does work. And I know everybody on this session today has had an experience like that. But it's one of the reasons that at Whole Kids, we say that our responsibility is to change the way we feed our kids. Because after all, from K to 12, we are the adults. And we are the ones who are determining which choices they have. And you're absolutely right. If we give kids healthy choices, guess what? They make healthy choices. But if you throw in, terrible choices, we should not, as adults, be shocked that that's what our kids will make. I will say, though, we have seen plenty of advocacy from our students for good food in cafeterias. Those are some of the best stories. I'm sensitive to everybody's time. I know we aim to wrap these up in 50 minutes, which is just not nearly enough time to dive into everything that this incredible team does. But I want to be sure we have answered anybody's questions that have them. So drop them in the chat. David, I didn't see any. Did you?
No, none yet.
Okay. So I'm going to maybe let Kim have the last word. And Kim, will you just in a couple of minutes talk about what's next? And because I'm going to let you have the last word, will you wrap up with appreciation?
Absolutely. I will tell you an immediate what's next is, first, you've heard about Scratchworks, which is a new trade association developed by 6 founding school food professionals, directors, and Chef Ann Foundation, Whole Kids Foundation, Wellness in the Schools, and Lifetime Foundation. We all came together to provide a resource for districts wanting to do more scratch cooking. And the very next step is our first ever annual gathering, which will take place here in Austin, Texas in April 2023. We're bringing 100 districts together to be able to learn, to share additional resources, meet and mentor each other, and then go back to their districts and start making those changes. So that's very first. And then, as you've also heard, our Healthy Pathways program, which is a fellowship program. When we talk about making systemic change, we can focus on what's happening right now in our schools, but we need to look to the future. As Annalise said, we need to create skilled professionals that are passionate about this work. And I will tell you, this has been several years in the making, and Mara has tirelessly worked to make this happen. And in fact, we're going to have our first window is right now, it's open for applications for these fellows. And that includes the state of California coming on board. So this is big, y'all. We're really excited. There's some big changes happening. And I will share that as far as our vision, our mission is to improve children's health and wellness through their nutrition. That's our North Star. And we will continue to examine ways to connect with kids to allow them the agency that we were talking about earlier to make those healthier choices and to provide those healthier choices. That is where we will continue to look. This is equity work, though, and I want to be really clear about that. This is making sure that every child has the nourishment they need to grow and develop and make those better choices as they continue to evolve. So that's where we are. I will absolutely share some appreciations to our partners here on this webinar. Annalisa and Mara, you two have continually inspired me and us at Whole Kids Foundation with your passion, your expertise, and your humbleness in working with districts, meeting them where they are and helping them grow. And it's the same core values that we embody. And I want to also thank the Whole Kids Foundation team for making this go so smoothly. I want to appreciate David and the rest of the team as well. And Nona, appreciations to you for being our fearless leader over this past decade and more, and recognizing that school food is so critical for feeding our babies. And so thank you.
Kim, right back at you. None of this would have happened if you hadn't joined the prepared foods department at the Gateway store all those years ago.
All those years ago.
Just in closing, everybody on this call from the whole kids side of things, we're team members just like you. If you ever have questions or need support, please know that you can reach out. You pretty much Google me and get my phone number, but all of our emails are available to you. And it would be a joy to hear from you. So I'll just reiterate Kim's appreciation. Thank you for making time today to learn a little bit about school food. Hopefully you'll be inspired to take an action. And to our partners, we couldn't do it without you. Take care, everybody.